The arrow left Maya's fingertips with a whisper, slicing through the cold morning air before embedding itself dead center in the target 50 meters away. And she smiled because archery was the one place where her overthinking mind finally went quiet. She lowered her bow and rolled her shoulders, feeling the familiar burn in her muscles. The outdoor range was nearly empty this early on a Saturday morning, just how she liked it. The October air carried a hint of frost, and her breath formed small clouds as she walked downfield to collect her arrows. This was her sanctuary, had been for the past 6 years since she'd stumbled into archery during a particularly difficult time in her life. Back then, she'd been drowning in anxiety from her demanding job as a physical therapist, feeling like she was losing herself in the constant needs of others. Archery had given her something just for herself. Maya pulled her arrows from the target, examining the tight grouping with satisfaction. At 27, she'd become one of the better archers at the range, though she competed rarely. She preferred the meditative aspect of it, the focus required to shut out the world and exist only in the moment between draw and release. "Excuse me, sorry to bother you." She turned to find a man standing a respectful distance away, hands tucked into the pockets of an expensive-looking jacket that seemed too pristine for an archery range. He was tall, probably early 30s, with dark hair that looked professionally styled even at 7 in the morning. His face was handsome in that clean-cut way that suggested he'd never had to struggle for anything, all strong jawline and confident posture. "Can I help you?" Maya asked, tucking her arrows into her quiver. "I hope so. I'm supposed to start beginner lessons today, but my instructor just called to cancel. Emergency of some kind." He gestured helplessly toward the small building that housed the range office. "They're trying to reschedule me, but apparently the next opening isn't for 3 weeks, and I was really hoping to start today." Maya studied him more carefully. His bow was clearly brand new, still gleaming, and he held it with the awkward uncertainty of someone who'd never shot before. His stance was all wrong, and she could tell from the way he gripped the handle that he'd probably hurt himself if he tried shooting without guidance. "That's unfortunate," she said neutrally, starting to walk back toward her shooting position. "I noticed you shooting," he continued, falling into step beside her. "You're really good, I mean incredibly good. That grouping was remarkable. Thank you." She set her quiver down and reached for her water bottle. "Would you consider teaching me? Just for today, I mean. I could pay you for your time, double whatever the range charges for lessons." Maya took a long drink, considering. She'd helped a few beginners over the years when the range was short-staffed, but she'd never enjoyed it much. Teaching required patience, and patience with strangers wasn't her strong suit. Still, something about his earnest expression made her hesitate. He didn't have the entitled air she'd expected from his expensive clothes and clearly moneyed background. "I don't usually teach," she said carefully. "I understand. But I'm here, you're here, and I promise I'm a quick learner. 1 session. If I'm hopeless, you can send me away and I'll wait for the regular instructor." There was something disarming about his self-deprecating humor. Maya found herself nodding before she'd fully decided to agree. "Fine. 1 session. But you do exactly what I say, no arguments. Archery is dangerous if you don't respect it." His face lit up with a genuine smile that transformed his handsome features into something warmer. "Deal. Thank you so much. I'm Connor, by the way." "Maya." She set down her bow and walked over to examine his equipment. "Let me see what you've got here." The next hour passed more quickly than she'd expected. Connor was true to his word about being a good student. He listened intently to her instructions about stance, grip, and form, never interrupting or trying to skip ahead. When she physically adjusted his positioning, placing her hands on his shoulders to square them properly or correcting his elbow alignment. He remained perfectly still and focused. There was something refreshing about his complete lack of ego, his willingness to look foolish while learning. "The power doesn't come from your arms," she explained, standing beside him as he prepared for his first real shot. "It comes from your back muscles. Think about bringing your shoulder blades together. Like this." He drew the string back, and while his form wasn't perfect, it was vastly improved from an hour ago. "Better. Now breathe. Don't hold it. Let your breath settle, and when you feel steady, release." The arrow flew forward, wobbling slightly but hitting the outer ring of the target. Connor's whoop of delight made her laugh despite herself. "I hit it. Did you see that?" "Not bad for your first shot," she admitted. "But don't develop bad habits by celebrating mediocrity." Again. He grinned at her, unbothered by the critique. "You're a tough teacher." "I'm an honest teacher. There's a difference." They continued working, and Maya found herself enjoying the process more than she'd anticipated. Connor had good body awareness, correcting his mistakes quickly once she pointed them out. He asked intelligent questions about technique and muscle memory, and seemed genuinely passionate about learning rather than just wanting to try something new on a whim. By the time they finished, the morning had warmed and the range had filled with other archers. Connor's last grouping showed real improvement, with 3 of his 6 arrows hitting near the center rings. "Thank you," he said as they walked back toward the building. "That was incredible. You're an amazing teacher. You made it easy by actually listening." Maya gathered her gear from her station, ready to head home. "Would you consider doing this again?" Connor asked, his tone casual but his eyes hopeful. "I know you said you don't usually teach, but I learned more in this hour than I think I would have in 3 regular lessons." Maya hesitated. She came to the range every Saturday morning without fail. It was her routine, her therapy. Adding someone else to that felt like an intrusion on her sacred space. But then again, she'd actually enjoyed herself this morning. Connor's enthusiasm was infectious, and there was something satisfying about watching someone improve under her guidance. "Maybe," she said finally. "If I'm here next week and you want another lesson, we can see how it goes." "I'll be here," Connor promised immediately. "Same time. I shoot at 7 every Saturday. Then I'll see you at 7 next Saturday." He shifted his bow case to his other hand and pulled out his wallet. "What do I owe you for today?" Maya waved him off. "Nothing. Consider it a favor." "I can't let you give up your time for free." "You can and you will. If this becomes a regular thing, we'll figure out payment. For today, it was just one archer helping another." Connor looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression must have convinced him to let it go. "Then thank you. Really. This was the highlight of my week." As Maya drove home, she found herself smiling without quite knowing why. Connor had been a pleasant surprise, and teaching him had been more rewarding than she'd expected. She wondered if he'd actually show up next week, or if his enthusiasm would fade once the novelty wore off. The following Saturday, Maya arrived at the range at her usual time to find Connor already there, stretching near the parking lot. He wore different clothes but the same eager expression, and his wave when he spotted her was almost boyish in its enthusiasm. "You're early," she observed, walking over with her gear bag slung over her shoulder. "Didn't want you to think I'd changed my mind." He fell into step beside her. "I've been looking forward to this all week. Have you been practicing?" "I wanted to, but I figured I shouldn't risk developing bad habits without supervision. I did work on my upper body strength, though. You mentioned the importance of back muscles." Maya nodded approvingly as they reached her preferred shooting station. The morning was crisp and clear, perfect conditions for archery. "Smart. Let's see if you remember what I taught you last week." Connor proved he'd retained everything. His stance was nearly perfect when he set up, and his grip on the bow had improved significantly. Maya made minor adjustments to his form and then watched as he sent his first arrow downrange. It hit just outside the center ring. "Much better," she said, genuinely impressed. "You've been visualizing the movements, haven't you? How did you know?" "Because muscle memory doesn't improve without practice, but mental rehearsal does help. You positioned yourself almost exactly right without me telling you what to fix." They settled into an easy rhythm. Maya would shoot around herself, then watch Connor shoot while offering corrections and encouragement. Between rounds, they talked. She learned he worked in manufacturing, though he was vague about the details. He seemed more interested in asking about her work as a physical therapist, listening with genuine interest as she described the challenges and rewards of helping people recover from injuries. "It must be satisfying," Connor said, pulling his arrows from the target. "Seeing people get better because of your help. It is. But it's also exhausting sometimes. Everyone needs something from you, and you have to stay positive and encouraging even when you're having a bad day yourself." "Is that why you started archery? To have something separate from work?" Maya nodded, impressed by his perceptiveness. "I was burning out pretty badly. A friend suggested I try archery, said it might help with stress. She was right. There's something meditative about it." "I can see that," Connor said thoughtfully. "The focus required. The way everything else has to fade away." "Exactly. Why did you decide to learn?" He was quiet for a moment, lining up his next shot. The arrow flew true, hitting just left of center. "I've spent the last decade focused entirely on my career. I'm good at what I do, and I've been successful. But I realized recently that I don't have anything that's just mine, you know. Everything in my life relates back to work somehow. I wanted to learn something completely new, something where being good at business doesn't give me any advantage." Maya understood that more than he probably realized. Archery is good for that. It doesn't care who you are or what you do. Either your form is right or it's not. "I like that honesty," Connor said with a slight smile. "And I like having a teacher who doesn't let me get away with lazy technique." The weeks began to blur together in the best way. Every Saturday morning, Connor arrived at the range early, and they spent 2 hours working on his archery. His improvement was steady and impressive. By the 4th week, he was consistently hitting the inner rings. By the 8th week, he could hold his own with the intermediate archers who frequented the range, but the lessons had become about more than archery. They talked about everything: their families, their frustrations, their dreams. Maya learned that Connor had grown up in Connecticut, that his father had been demanding and difficult, that he'd built his success partly to prove something to a man who'd never been satisfied. Connor learned that Maya had lost her mother young, that she'd put herself through school working multiple jobs, that she valued independence above almost everything because she'd fought so hard for it. "You're doing it again," Maya said one morning in late November, reaching out to adjust Connor's bow hand. "You're tensing up before the release." "Sorry." He relaxed his grip, but she noticed the tightness around his eyes remained. "What's wrong? You've been distracted all morning." Connor lowered his bow and sighed. "Big meeting on Monday. Negotiations for a significant deal. I've been running scenarios in my head all week." "Hence the tension," Maya said. "You're trying to control the outcome instead of trusting your form." "Is this still about archery, or are you therapying me?" But his tone was light, teasing. "With you, it's hard to tell the difference." She demonstrated the proper release again. "You know what to do, stop overthinking it." He tried again, and this time the arrow flew perfectly, striking dead center. Connor turned to her with a triumphant grin that made her heart do something complicated in her chest. "Better?" he asked. Much. Maya busied herself with her own equipment, trying to ignore the flutter of awareness that had become increasingly common around Connor. Somewhere in the past few months, he'd stopped being just a student or even a friend. She found herself thinking about him during the week, looking forward to Saturday mornings with an anticipation that had nothing to do with archery. It was dangerous territory. Maya had been single for 2 years, ever since her last relationship had ended badly. She dated a fellow physical therapist who'd seemed perfect on paper, but had slowly revealed himself to be controlling and jealous. Since then, she'd been cautious, protecting herself. Connor felt different, but that was exactly why she needed to be careful. She didn't really know him, not beyond these Saturday morning lessons. For all she knew, he had a girlfriend, a complicated life she wasn't part of. "Want to grab coffee after we finish?" Connor asked, breaking into her thoughts. "There's a place down the road that makes incredible breakfast sandwiches." Maya's first instinct was to say no, to keep their relationship confined to the range. But she was tired of being cautious, tired of protecting herself from possibilities. "Sure," she said. "I could eat." The cafe was warm and crowded, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and baking bread. They claimed a small table by the window, and Maya wrapped her cold hands around her mug gratefully. Connor had been right about the food. Her breakfast sandwich was perfect, the egg cooked just right, the bread toasted and buttery. "So tell me about this deal that's stressing you out," she said between bites. Connor hesitated, stirring his coffee. "It's complicated. I probably shouldn't bore you with work stuff. I told you about the patient who threw a weight at me last month. Fair is fair." He laughed at that. "True. Okay, but you have to promise not to think differently of me." "Why would I think differently of you?" "Because I haven't been entirely honest about what I do." Connor met her eyes directly. "I told you I work in manufacturing, which is technically true, but I don't just work in it. I own the company. Actually, I own several companies. I'm what you'd call a millionaire, though that word always sounds pretentious to me." Maya sat back, processing this. It explained the expensive clothes, the vagueness about his work, the way he carried himself with quiet confidence. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because people treat me differently when they know. They either want something from me or they assume I'm some entitled rich guy. You treated me like a normal person who happened to be bad at archery. I like that." She considered this. She wasn't sure how to feel. On one hand, she appreciated his honesty now. On the other, he'd been deliberately misleading her for months. "What kind of companies?" "Manufacturing, like I said. We make industrial components, primarily for construction and automotive industries. I inherited the first company from my grandfather and built it up, then acquired 2 others over the past 5 years. The deal on Monday is for a 4th acquisition, a company that would expand our market significantly." "That's why you're stressed." "Partially. But also because I've been lying to you by omission, and I hate that. You're the most genuine person I've met in years, Maya. The last thing I wanted was to ruin that by revealing I'm exactly the kind of person you probably dislike on principle." Maya took a long drink of her coffee, thinking. "I don't dislike rich people on principle. I dislike entitled people who think money makes them better than everyone else." "You've never acted that way." "I try not to be that person. My grandfather wasn't like that either. He grew up poor, built everything from nothing. He taught me that money is a tool, not an identity." "He sounds like he was a good man. The best." Connor's expression softened. "He's the one who taught me to work hard, to treat people with respect regardless of their position. I try to run my companies the way he would have wanted." They talked for another hour, Connor opening up about his work in a way he clearly hadn't before. Maya found herself fascinated by the challenges he described, the balance between growth and maintaining company culture, the responsibility of employing hundreds of people. He wasn't boasting or trying to impress her. If anything, he seemed relieved to finally be honest. "So what happens with us now?" Maya asked as they walked back to their cars. The parking lot was nearly empty, most of the morning crowd having left. "What do you want to happen?" Connor's voice was carefully neutral. "I want to keep teaching you archery," she said slowly. "And I want you to keep being honest with me. I can do that." He paused beside his car, a sleek sedan that probably cost more than Maya made in a year. "For what it's worth, these Saturday mornings have become the best part of my week. Not because of the archery, though I do love learning. Because of you." Maya's breath caught. There it was, the acknowledgement of what had been building between them for weeks. She could deflect, play it safe, keep things professional, or she could be brave. "Same," she admitted quietly. "I look forward to Saturdays all week." Connor's smile was slow and warm. "Then maybe we could see each other outside of the range sometime. Dinner, maybe. I'd like that." They stood there for a moment, the December air cold around them but neither seeming to notice. Then Connor reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "I'll text you this week," he said. "After the deal closes, assuming I survive the negotiations. You'll be fine. Just remember what I taught you about breathing and staying relaxed." He laughed. "I'll try to apply your archery wisdom to business. Who knows, maybe it'll work." Maya watched him drive away, her heart beating faster than it should. She was falling for him, had probably been falling for weeks without admitting it. The knowledge was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Tuesday evening, her phone buzzed with a text from Connor. The deal had closed successfully. He wanted to take her to dinner Friday night if she was free. Maya said yes without hesitation. She spent an embarrassing amount of time getting ready Friday evening, changing outfits 3 times before settling on a simple black dress that made her feel confident without trying too hard. Connor picked her up at 7, and the look on his face when she answered the door made all the outfit anxiety worthwhile. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He wore dark slacks and a fitted button-down that emphasized his broad shoulders. The restaurant he'd chosen was upscale but not ostentatious, the kind of place with excellent food and intimate lighting. They were seated at a quiet corner table, and Maya felt some of her nervousness fade as they fell into the easy conversation that had always come naturally between them. "Tell me something I don't know about you," Connor said after they'd ordered. "Something you've never mentioned at the range." Maya thought about it. "I wanted to be a dancer when I was younger. Ballet, specifically. I was actually pretty good. What happened? Reality. There's no money in it unless you're exceptional, and I was good but not exceptional. I needed a practical career, something stable. Physical therapy let me stay in that world of movement and bodies while actually being able to pay rent. Do you regret it? Sometimes. Mostly no. I help people, which matters to me, but occasionally I'll see a performance and feel this pang of longing for what might have been." Connor nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that. The path not taken. What about you? What would you be doing if you weren't running companies?" "Architecture, maybe. I love the idea of designing spaces, creating something tangible that people interact with every day. Buildings tell stories. It's not too late, you know. You could study it, even just for yourself." "Maybe I will. You've inspired me, actually. Watching you with archery, how it's completely separate from your work life. It made me realize I can have interests outside of business." Their food arrived, and they ate slowly, talking between bites. Connor told her about his deal, the negotiations that had been tenser than expected but ultimately successful. Maya described a difficult patient who'd finally had a breakthrough that week. tears of frustration turning to tears of joy when she managed to walk unassisted for the first time in months. "You really love what you do," Connor observed. "Most days. The good ones make up for the hard ones." Maya set down her fork. "Can I ask you something? Anything? Why are you single, successful, good-looking, nice? Seems like you'd be fighting off potential partners." Connor's laugh was rueful. "I could ask you the same question, but to answer honestly, my relationships haven't worked out because I've prioritized work over everything else. I'd canceled dates for meetings, cut vacations short for deals. Eventually, people got tired of coming second. And now I'm trying to be different, trying to build a life that's about more than just success and acquisitions." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Finding you has been a big part of that." Maya's heart raced at his touch. "You didn't find me. You asked me to teach you archery." "Best decision I've made in years." They lingered over dessert, neither wanting the evening to end. Connor told her about his family, his 2 younger sisters who gave him endless grief about his workaholic tendencies. Maya talked about her father, who'd remarried a few years after her mother's death and now lived in Florida with his new wife. "Do you see him often?" Connor asked. "Couple times a year. We're not close, but we're not estranged either. He did his best after Mom died, but I think I reminded him too much of her. It was hard for both of us." "That must have been lonely." "It was, but it made me independent, taught me to rely on myself. Not all bad lessons." When Connor finally drove her home, he walked her to her door like something out of an old movie. They stood on her small porch, the December night clear and cold around them. "I had a really good time," Maya said, suddenly shy. "Thank you for dinner. Thank you for saying yes." Connor hesitated, then asked, "Can I kiss you?" Instead of answering, Maya closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deepened as Connor's arms came around her waist. He kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus and attention, making her feel like she was the only thing that mattered in his world. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Connor rested his forehead against hers. "Wow," he murmured. "Yeah," Maya agreed, her hands still fisted in his shirt. "I should go before I don't want to." But he didn't move. "You should," she agreed, not releasing him. They kissed again, slower this time, savoring it. Finally, Connor pulled back with visible effort. "Saturday morning?" he asked. "I'll be there." Maya watched him walk to his car, then floated inside on a cloud of happiness. She felt like a teenager, giddy and excited and terrified all at once. This thing with Connor was real, and it was moving fast, and she was in no way prepared for how much she already cared about him. Saturday morning arrived cold and threatening snow. Maya bundled up in extra layers, but when she arrived at the range, Connor was already there waiting. He pulled her into a hug that lifted her off her feet, and she laughed, breathless. "I missed you," he said against her hair. "It's been less than 24 hours. Still missed you." They tried to focus on archery, but the dynamic had shifted. Connor stood closer when she corrected his form. His hand would brush hers when passing equipment. The air between them felt charged, full of possibility. When Maya was lining up a shot, she felt Connor's eyes on her, and her arrow went wide, missing the target entirely. "That's your fault," she accused, turning to face him. "What did I do?" He was the picture of innocence. "You were staring at me. Can you blame me?" "You're beautiful when you're focused." Maya felt herself blush. "You're distracting." "Good." Connor grinned, unrepentant. "Want to skip the rest of practice and get breakfast?" They ended up at the same cafe, but this time Connor sat beside her instead of across, his thigh warm against hers. They shared a pastry, and when Maya got powdered sugar on her lip, Connor brushed it away with his thumb, the gesture intimate. "So we're doing this," Maya said. "Actually dating. If that's okay with you, it's terrifying, she admitted. I don't have a good track record with relationships. Neither do I, Connor said. But I think we could be different. I feel different with you, Maya. Like I can just be myself without all the pressure and expectations. I feel that too. Then let's take it one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations beyond being honest with each other. It sounded so simple when he said it like that. Maya nodded, leaning into his warmth. The weeks leading up to Christmas passed in a blur of happiness. They fell into a routine of Saturday morning archery followed by breakfast, then spending the rest of the weekend together. Connor took her to a holiday market where they drank hot chocolate and browsed handmade crafts. Maya brought him to a performance of the Nutcracker, watching his face as he experienced the ballet for the first time. They cooked dinner together in her tiny apartment, laughing when Connor revealed he was hopeless in the kitchen. They watched movies curled up on her couch and talked until late into the night about everything and nothing. "What are you doing for Christmas?" Connor asked one evening in mid-December. They were at his place, a stunning modern condo downtown that had initially intimidated Maya until Connor admitted he barely spent any time there. "Working, actually. I volunteered to take the holiday shift so the therapists with kids could be home." "What about you?" "Sisters want me to come to Connecticut, but I was thinking of staying here. I've done the family obligation thing enough years. I'd rather spend it with you." "Connor, you should be with your family." "I'd rather be with you," he repeated firmly. "But if you're working, maybe I could come to the hospital. Help out somehow. You want to spend Christmas at a hospital. I want to spend Christmas with you. The location is secondary." Maya's heart swelled. Her ex would have been furious if she'd prioritized work over him during a holiday. Connor just wanted to be supportive. "You can come," she said. "But I'm putting you to work. Patients need cheering up on holidays." Christmas Day found Connor at the hospital's rehabilitation wing, wearing a ridiculous Santa hat Maya had provided and helping patients with their exercises. He was surprisingly good at it, patient and encouraging, making elderly patients laugh with his terrible jokes. Maya watched him help a stroke survivor practice walking, offering steady support and genuine praise, and felt herself fall a little more in love. They grabbed dinner from the hospital cafeteria, eating lukewarm turkey and stuffing at a quiet table in the corner. "This is the best Christmas I've had in years," Connor said, completely serious. "You're eating terrible hospital food and wearing a Santa hat. I'm with you. That's all that matters." Maya reached across the table and took his hand. "Thank you for being here. Nowhere else I'd rather be." As January arrived and the holidays faded, their relationship deepened. Maya met Connor's sisters during a video call, two bright women who immediately grilled her about her intentions toward their brother. Connor endured a physical therapy session at Maya's clinic, experiencing firsthand how demanding her work was. They had their first fight, a silly argument about whose turn it was to choose the movie that ended with both of them laughing at the absurdity. They made up thoroughly, and Maya decided fighting with Connor wasn't so bad when the making up was that good. One Saturday morning in late January, Maya arrived at the range to find Connor already shooting, his form perfect, his grouping tight. She stood back and watched, impressed by how far he'd come. He was no longer a beginner by any stretch. In fact, he was good enough to compete if he wanted to. Connor lowered his bow and turned, his face lighting up when he saw her. That expression, the pure joy at her presence, never failed to make her heart skip. "How long have you been here?" she asked, walking over. "About an hour. Couldn't sleep." He seemed nervous, shifting his weight. "Everything okay?" "Yeah. Actually, more than okay. I have something for you." Connor reached into his gear bag and pulled out a long, wrapped package. "Early birthday present. My birthday isn't until March, so it's very early. Open it." Maya unwrapped the package carefully, then gasped. Inside was a custom bow, beautiful and clearly expensive, with her name engraved on the riser. It was perfectly balanced, exactly her draw weight, the kind of equipment she'd dreamed about but would never have bought for herself. "Connor, this is too much. It's not enough. You've given me so much, Maya, not just archery lessons, but a life outside of work, perspective, happiness." He stepped closer, taking her hands. "I love you. I've been trying to figure out the right time to say it, but there's no perfect moment. I just love you, and I wanted you to know." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. God, I've been terrified to say it because it feels so fast, but I do. I love you." Connor kissed her, sweet and deep, and Maya felt like everything in her life had been leading to this moment. When they finally broke apart, both were grinning. "So we're doing this," Connor said. "Really doing this. We're doing this." They shot together that morning, and Maya had never felt more at peace. The bow Connor had given her was perfect, responsive, and smooth. More than that, though, was the feeling of rightness, of being with someone who understood her and supported her and loved her for exactly who she was. February brought challenges. Connor's company hit a rough patch, a major client pulling out unexpectedly. He threw himself into damage control, working late nights and weekends. Maya gave him space while making sure he knew she was there if he needed her. She'd bring dinner to his office, sitting quietly while he worked, just keeping him company. Connor was grateful for her presence, for the way she supported without smothering. "I'm sorry I've been so distracted," he said one evening, rubbing his tired eyes. "Don't apologize. This is important. You're important too. I know that. You've shown me that in 100 different ways. I can handle a few busy weeks." Connor pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "What did I do to deserve you?" "Ask me for archery lessons," Maya said with a smile. The crisis eventually resolved, the company weathering the storm better than expected. Connor emerged exhausted but relieved, and they celebrated with a weekend away, driving to a bed and breakfast in the mountains. They hiked through snow-covered trails, soaked in the hot tub under the stars, and made love slowly in a room with a fireplace. It was perfect and intimate, and Maya felt their connection solidify into something unshakable. "Move in with me," Connor said on their last morning, both of them still in bed, wrapped in each other. "What? Move in with me? Or I'll move in with you, though your apartment is smaller. Or we find a new place together. I don't care about the logistics. I just want to wake up next to you every morning." Maya propped herself up on her elbow, studying his face. "That's a big step. I know, and if you need more time, I understand. But Maya, I'm all in here. This isn't casual for me." You're it for me too," she said softly. "But I need to think about the practical aspects. My lease isn't up until June, and your place is downtown, which would add 30 minutes to my commute. So we find somewhere in between, somewhere that works for both of us. We can start looking now, take our time finding the right place." It was so typical of Connor, addressing her practical concerns seriously instead of dismissing them. Maya kissed him, long and sweet. "Okay, let's find a place together." They spent the next few months house hunting, a process that was both frustrating and fun. Maya vetoed anything too ostentatious, while Connor eliminated anything he deemed unsafe or too far from Maya's work. Finally, in early April, they found a perfect compromise. A townhouse in a quiet neighborhood, with a small yard and enough space for both of them without being excessive. Connor wanted to buy it outright, but Maya insisted on contributing, even though her portion was significantly smaller. They compromised, putting both their names on the deed and splitting costs proportionally to their incomes. Moving in together was chaos. Maya didn't have much furniture, having lived in a tiny apartment with mostly second-hand pieces. Connor's place was professionally decorated but impersonal. They spent weekends shopping for items that felt like theirs, arguing playfully over everything from kitchen supplies to bedroom furniture. Maya insisted on a comfortable couch for movie nights. Connor surprised her by converting the smallest bedroom into a dedicated space for her ballet practice, installing a bar and mirrors. "When did you plan this?" she asked, stunned when he showed her the finished room. "I've been working on it for weeks. You said you missed dancing. So dance." Maya threw her arms around him, overcome. No one had ever understood her like this, seen not just who she was but who she'd wanted to be. Their first night in the house, they ordered pizza and ate sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes. Connor pulled Maya into his lap and they sat there in comfortable silence, looking around at their space. "Happy?" he asked. "So happy. You?" "Happiest I've ever been." The summer passed in domestic bliss. They established routines, learning each other's habits and quirks. Maya discovered Connor was obsessive about recycling and terrible about putting his clothes in the hamper. Connor learned that Maya needed coffee before conversation in the morning and had a tendency to leave half-full water glasses on every surface. They learned to navigate each other's moods, when to push and when to give space. They had disagreements, but they talked through them, both committed to making things work. Saturday morning still meant archery. It had become their tradition, the thing that had brought them together. Connor was competing now, placing well in local tournaments. Maya was proud of how far he'd come, though she teased him mercilessly when he got cocky. "Remember when you could barely hold the bow without shaking?" she asked one morning after he'd landed 6 perfect shots. Vaguely. "Seems like a lifetime ago." "It was less than a year. A lot has changed in a year." Connor set down his bow and pulled her close. "You've changed my entire life, Maya. You've changed mine too." They kissed there at the range, not caring who saw, lost in each other. In September, Connor's company finalized a major merger, something he'd been working toward for years. The celebration was huge, a formal event with hundreds of attendees. Maya wore a midnight blue gown and felt out of her depth among the wealthy elite, but Connor never left her side, introducing her proudly as his girlfriend, the love of his life. "You're really important, aren't you?" she murmured during a quiet moment, watching the crowd part for him wherever he walked. "I'm successful," he corrected, "but I'm only important to the people I love. The rest is just business." Near the end of the night, Connor clinked his glass for attention, giving a speech about the merger and thanking his team. Then he paused, his eyes finding Maya in the crowd. "I also want to thank someone who reminds me every day that there's more to life than business. Maya, you keep me grounded and make me better. I love you." The applause was thunderous, but Maya only heard her heartbeat, only saw Connor's eyes on her, full of love and certainty. October marked a year since they'd met. Connor wanted to do something special, but Maya insisted on spending it at the archery range where it all began. They arrived early, before the sun was fully up, the October air cold enough to see their breath. The range was empty except for them. Connor set up his equipment, but Maya noticed he seemed nervous, fumbling with his gear in a way he hadn't in months. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just thinking." He positioned himself at the line, drew his bow, and shot. The arrow flew true, hitting the center. He shot 5 more, each one perfect, creating a tight cluster in the middle of the target. "Show off," Maya teased, but she was impressed. That grouping was championship level. "Come see," Connor said, gesturing her forward. Maya walked downfield to the target, then stopped short. Attached to the center arrow, where all 6 had grouped, was a small box. Her heart started pounding. "Connor," he was right behind her, and when she turned, he was on one knee, the morning sun breaking over the horizon behind him. Maya, a year ago I came to this range not knowing anything about archery or about finding the love of my life. You've taught me both. You've shown me what it means to be truly happy, to build a life that matters. I don't want to spend another day without knowing you'll be by my side forever. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring with a single diamond. Will you marry me? Maya's vision blurred with tears. Yes. God, yes. Connor stood and slipped the ring on her finger, then kissed her as the sun rose fully, bathing them in golden light. It was perfect, so perfectly them. This proposal at the archery range where they'd met, where they'd fallen in love. They called their families from the parking lot, both sets of parents thrilled by the news. Connor's sisters screamed so loudly Maya had to hold the phone away from her ear. Her father cried, saying he couldn't wait to meet the man who'd made his daughter so happy. The wedding planning was surprisingly easy. Neither of them wanted anything huge or ostentatious. They chose a date in early spring, deciding on a small ceremony at a botanical garden followed by dinner with close family and friends. Maya's maid of honor was her best friend from physical therapy school. Connor's best man was his college roommate, one of the few people who'd known him before the success and money. "Are you nervous?" Maya asked the night before the wedding. They'd agreed to spend it apart, traditional but difficult after a year of sharing a bed. "Not even a little," Connor said over the phone. "I've never been more certain of anything, me neither. I love you." "I love you too. See you tomorrow, future Mrs. Parker." "I'm keeping my name," Maya reminded him, laughing. "See you tomorrow, future wife who's keeping her own name because she's independent and amazing." The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. Maya got ready surrounded by her bridesmaids, feeling calm and happy. When she walked down the aisle and saw Connor waiting for her, his eyes bright with tears, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Their vows were simple and heartfelt. Connor promised to always support her dreams, to never let business come before their relationship, to make her laugh every day. Maya promised to be his partner in all things, to call him on his workaholic tendencies, to love him through challenges and celebrations alike. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant said, and Connor pulled Maya into a kiss that drew cheers from their guests. The reception was perfect, intimate and joyful. They danced together as husband and wife, surrounded by everyone they loved, and Maya thought about how lucky she was. A year and a half ago, she'd been alone, protective, scared of letting anyone in. Connor had changed all that, shown her what real partnership looked like. "What are you thinking about?" Connor asked as they swayed together. "How I almost said no when you asked me to teach you archery." "Thank God you didn't. Thank God you asked." They honeymooned in Italy, 2 weeks of art and food and exploration. They visited Rome and Florence and Venice, holding hands as they wandered through ancient streets. They took a cooking class in Tuscany, laughing as they failed spectacularly at making pasta from scratch. They made love in a villa overlooking rolling hills and made plans for their future together. "How many kids do you want?" Connor asked one lazy afternoon, both of them drowsy from wine and sunshine. "I always thought 2 or 3, you, however many we're blessed with. I just want to build a family with you." "Not yet though," Maya said. "I want you to myself for a while longer." "That works perfectly for me." They returned home to their townhouse, to their jobs and routines and the life they'd built together. Saturdays still meant archery, though now they went as equals, as partners in every sense. Connor continued competing, eventually winning a regional championship that made Maya proud enough to cry. Maya got promoted to senior therapist at her clinic, taking on more responsibility and loving the challenge. 2 years after their wedding, Maya discovered she was pregnant. They'd been talking about starting a family, but it still felt surreal when the test showed positive. Connor's reaction was everything she'd hoped for. Pure joy, immediate planning, devoted support. He went to every doctor's appointment, read every parenting book he could find, and converted their home office into a nursery. Their daughter arrived on a snowy December morning, tiny and perfect and more loved than any child had ever been. They named her Evelyn Rose after both their mothers. Connor cried when he held her for the first time, and Maya fell even more in love with him watching him become a father. Parenthood was exhausting and wonderful. They navigated sleepless nights and feeding schedules together, taking turns so neither was overwhelmed. Connor proved to be an amazing father, patient and gentle and completely devoted. He cut back his hours at work, delegating more so he could be present for Evelyn's milestones. "You're really good at this," Maya said one evening, watching him rock Evelyn to sleep. "We're good at this," Connor corrected. "We're a team." When Evelyn was 6 months old, they brought her to the archery range for the first time. She was too young to understand, but they wanted her to see where their story had begun. Connor held her while Maya shot, and Maya held her while Connor shot, and the range felt complete somehow, their family united in the place that had brought them together. "Think she'll want to learn archery?" Connor asked, Evelyn dozing against his chest. "We'll teach her if she does. But we'll support whatever she's passionate about. Like your parents supported you." Maya thought about that. Her mother had died too young, but she'd always encouraged Maya's dancing. Her father had been distant but never dismissive. "Better than my parents supported me." "Because we'll do it together." Life settled into a new rhythm with Evelyn. They were busy, juggling careers and parenting, but they made time for each other. Date nights became sacred, whether that meant fancy restaurants or takeout on the couch after Evelyn was asleep. They still went to the range together, though less frequently, bringing Evelyn in a carrier and shooting while she napped. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Connor surprised Maya with a renewed proposal, this time not for marriage but for a new adventure. "I want to start a foundation," he told her over dinner. "Something that provides equipment and lessons for kids who want to learn archery but whose families can't afford it. I keep thinking about how archery changed both our lives. I want to give that opportunity to others." Maya's heart swelled. "That's beautiful. I love it. I want you to be involved, your name on it alongside mine. This isn't just my thing, it's ours." They launched the Parker Family Archery Foundation the following year, funding programs at schools and community centers. Maya taught occasional lessons, finding joy in sharing her passion with young people who reminded her of her younger self. Connor handled the business side, securing donations and managing operations. Evelyn, now a toddler, came to events, charming everyone she met. At the foundation's first major fundraiser, Connor gave a speech about how archery had brought him to Maya, how a simple request for lessons had changed his entire life. "I came to that range looking to learn a new skill," he said, his eyes finding Maya in the crowd. "But I found so much more. I found purpose, partnership, and love. My wife taught me that success isn't measured in acquisitions or profit margins. It's measured in moments of connection, in the lives we touch, in the family we build. This foundation is our way of passing that forward." The applause was thunderous, but Maya barely heard it. She was too busy wiping away tears, overwhelmed by how far they'd come. Years continued to pass, marked by milestones and quiet moments alike. Evelyn started school, showing an early aptitude for art that thrilled both her parents. They bought her paints and sketchbooks, filling the house with her creations. Connor taught her archery when she expressed interest at age 7, and Maya taught her basic ballet positions in her practice room. They supported every interest, never pushing, always encouraging. When Evelyn was 9, Maya discovered she was pregnant again. The pregnancy was a surprise but a welcome one. Their son, James Connor, arrived in early summer, completing their family in a way they hadn't known they needed. Evelyn was an attentive big sister, always wanting to help with the baby. "Our family is perfect," Connor said one evening, all 4 of them piled on the couch watching a movie. Evelyn was tucked under one arm, James asleep on Maya's chest. "It really is," Maya agreed. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they returned to the archery range where they'd met, leaving the kids with Connor's sister for the day. The range had changed slightly over the years, new buildings and expanded facilities, but Maya's favorite shooting station was still there. "Remember the first time I shot here?" Connor asked, setting up his equipment. "You were terrible," Maya said fondly. "I thought you'd give up after one lesson." "I was terrible because I was nervous. You were so beautiful and intimidating." "I was not intimidating." "You were absolutely intimidating." This confident, skilled archer who looked at me like I was wasting her time. Maya laughed. "I was protecting myself. I'd been hurt before. I didn't want to let anyone in. And now I can't imagine my life without you in it. You're my best friend, my partner, the father of my children. You're everything." Connor pulled her close, kissing her deeply despite being in public. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "Come on," Maya said. "Let's shoot." They spent the morning the way they had so many Saturday mornings over the years, shooting and talking and simply being together. Connor's form was still perfect, all those years of practice evident in every shot. Maya shot beside him, feeling the familiar peace that archery always brought her. "I have something for you," Connor said after they'd finished. He reached into his gear bag and pulled out a small frame. Inside was a photo from their wedding day, but it wasn't one Maya had seen before. In the picture, they were at the reception, dancing, both laughing at something. The joy on their faces was radiant. "I've been carrying this in my bag for months," Connor explained. "I wanted to give it to you here where everything started. I want you to remember that I will always love you the way I loved you that day, that I loved you that first morning when you agreed to teach me, that I love you right now. You're my forever, Maya." She took the frame with trembling hands, her vision blurring with tears. "You're my forever, too." They stood there in the crisp autumn air, holding each other, surrounded by the sound of other archers practicing. It was ordinary and perfect, a moment that captured everything their relationship had become: steady, deep, and unshakable. Over the following years, their lives continued to unfold beautifully. The foundation grew, helping hundreds of kids discover archery. Connor gradually stepped back from day-to-day operations of his companies, promoting trusted colleagues and spending more time with family. Maya became director of her clinic, loving the balance of patient care and leadership. Evelyn developed into a talented artist, her work winning awards and filling the house with color. James discovered a passion for music, filling the house with piano melodies. They still went to the range together most Saturdays, though now often with one or both kids in tow. Evelyn showed promise as an archer, and James, though young, loved watching his parents shoot. Connor competed less frequently but still placed well when he did. Maya found peace in the familiar rhythm, the meditation of draw and release. On a Saturday morning in late spring, 15 years after they'd first met, Maya and Connor stood side by side at their favorite shooting stations. The sun was warm, the air sweet with blooming flowers. They'd left the kids with friends for the morning, stealing time alone together. "You ever think about how different our lives would be if I hadn't asked you for lessons?" Connor asked between rounds. "All the time," Maya admitted. "I think about how close I came to saying no, to keeping myself closed off and protected. I'm glad you said yes. Me too. Best decision I ever made. They shot together in comfortable silence, years of partnership evident in their synchronized movements. When they finished, they walked downfield together to collect their arrows, hands linked. I love you, Connor said, pulling her close. I love you too, always. They kissed there at the range, just as they had so many times over the years. Around them, the world continued, other archers practicing, birds singing, life unfolding. But in that moment, they existed only for each other, two people whose lives had intersected by chance and grown together by choice. As they drove home, talking about their plans for the rest of the weekend, Maya felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Her life hadn't turned out the way she'd expected. It had turned out so much better. She'd found a partner who supported her completely, who made her laugh, who'd built a beautiful life alongside her. They'd created a family filled with love and possibility. They'd found purpose in helping others discover the passion that had brought them together. That evening, with both kids tucked into bed, Maya and Connor sat on their back patio, watching the stars emerge. Connor's arm was around her shoulders and she leaned into his familiar warmth. "Happy?" he asked, a question he'd been asking for years. "Incredibly happy," Maya replied, the same answer she always gave because it was always true. They sat there in peaceful silence, two people who'd found each other at an archery range and built a lifetime of love from that simple beginning. The arrow Maya had shot that first morning had hit its target, but neither of them could have known it would lead here. To this house, this family, this profound and enduring love. As the night deepened and the stars brightened overhead, they remained together exactly where they belonged, partners in this beautiful life they'd created together. It had started with a simple request for archery lessons, but it had become so much more. It had become everything.